back to my little gardening show. Today's a big day. We're getting ready to move the cold weather seedlings out of the grow room. Hopefully get them over to the greenhouse in the next day or so. Before I can do that though, what I want to do is separate these out, get them in bigger containers to finish out the last like 2 or 3 weeks. They've been in these trays for about 4 weeks now. They're doing pretty good. I've been watering them with a liquid fertilizer mix. It's a mixture of organic synthetic nutrients, and it's going pretty good. They're getting everything they need to get a good start. But now it's time to transplant them, get them separated in their own little containers, give them a couple weeks in that, and then we'll plant them out in the garden. As the weather gets warmer, things are really going to start picking up. So a lot to do, but we got some time to do that. So I want to take you along and show you kind of my process here. So first things first, I've already got one tray divided out. There's about 36 seedlings per tray. Basically doing it, splitting them out into containers. I'm doubling up my trays, so I'll end up with 2 trays of seedlings once I've got these split out, more than likely. Now I went ahead from I think it's called Growers Supply website, ordered these, and I'll leave a link in the description to these, but these are 5 inches deep. They're 3.5 inches square. Really nice containers, similar like what I would do if I had solo cups, drilling holes, trying to jerry rig things. What's nice about these is they're uniform, so I can have 18 in a tray. They're going to fit everything perfectly. They're not going to jostle around. One of the challenges getting seedlings out to Dad's house is I'd have everything potted up, and then I get there and everything's spilled over. Or we have some challenges there. These, if I'm careful with them, we can reuse them. And so nice containers. When we pot them up, reason why I want to get them bigger containers is to encourage the root growth. Instead of having a tight root ball, I want to have a deeper, a bigger root mass. And so I'm hoping over the course of like next 3 weeks or so, these seedlings can finish out their time and really spread their roots down into this potting mix. And then when it comes time to transplant, I've got a seedling that's got a really nice root mass to it. It's going to stand a better chance of survival. The roots are probably the most important aspect of the seedlings. We can have a lot of good top growth, which is going to allow it to do a lot of photosynthesis. But if it doesn't have the roots to take up the nutrients, the water, to get the air and all that to fuel that growth, to help support that growth, the seedlings aren't going to have the probability of them surviving the first couple weeks is not going to be as good. They're going to be struggling with all the conditions, the wind, direct sunlight, a lot of different things that we're going to have to ease these things into. They're designed to grow though. They're made to grow, so I want to give them the best chance I can. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and divide up this tray. I'll show you kind of the method of the madness here. Alright, so the first tray we're going to divide up, or actually it's my second tray technically, is going to be the kale and the kohlrabi. 2 rows of kohlrabi, 2 rows of kale. What we're going to do is borrow our little Ann Leonard soil knife here. I've also used the trowel. Whatever you got will work. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to come down along these plants here, and I got to be kind of careful as I'm pulling things back, but we're going to cut this like a piece of cake, or like a sheet cake. And we're trying to keep everything uniform, but I'm going to get my little knife in here. I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to start kind of chopping down through here. And careful not to lop off the foliage of these plants. Even though I'm cutting through some roots and stuff like this, the reason why I'm doing this is so that each of them have about the same amount of root ball on them, right? Instead of trying to pull them apart, this is going to just make things a little easier, a little more uniform. Give them all kind of a fair start. One thing that I did before we started all this cutting and stuff is I went ahead and watered this tray so that I have a better chance of getting kind of the, keeping the blocks intact as I'm making them. And we're just going to do one row at a time. Alright. We're going to go ahead and do the rest of them that way as well. Actually, I could probably go ahead and do the rest of them real quick. Well, to keep things brief, let's move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step is just fill these containers with my potting mix. And what you want to do there is you want to make sure that fill these about halfway, and it'll make sure it's tamped down all the way to the bottom, like, you know, tamped down pretty good so that it's making contact here with these holes, so that when I go to bottom water or whatnot, it makes good contact and the water is able to, through capillary action, come up and bottom water the plants. So we want these about halfway full. At this point, I'm just using a soilless grow mix because we're going to continue like with the liquid fertilizer regimen. I think there's some worm castings I've got mixed in with this just to give it a little more structure and whatnot. Just some trace nutrients. So anyway, you get the idea. We'll fill these up, and then on to the next step. All right, so I've already cut my seedlings. I've already cut it up like a sheet cake, right? Trying to split the difference between seedlings and whatnot. I got my little homemade wedgie tool. This is just a cheapy tent stake that I bent the end out. It makes a really nice soil tool to work with seedlings. I'm just going to reach down in the corner and get underneath this, dig out my first one. So I've got a nice little soil block there. I'm going to drop it here into my container. I'm going to grab a big handful of potting mix. I'm going to hold the foliage up, keep the stem stabilized, and then I'm going to drop this in. I'm going to kind of sprinkle it in, and then kind of work this around the plant. And be careful not to push on the stem, but I can push a little bit on the root ball. I want to pack this in real good so there's good contact. Another little handful of mix. And there you have it. Got the seedling here. Plenty of room to grow. Again, another 2 to 3 weeks in this container, we should see that those roots begin to come to this area here. If we left them in here long enough, the roots would actually penetrate through the bottom and come out the holes. We'll see that with the tomatoes when we get the warm weather stuff going. Now, once you get them all potted up like this, the next step is we need to hit them with, we need to water this, and we need to hit them with some nitrogen-based fertilizer, which my organic fertilizer mix that I've got will do the trick. And we want to do that because that will help this plant deal with any kind of transplant shock associated with digging it out of its spot that it's been in for the last 4 weeks. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so I got my little fertilizer mix here. Again, what's nice about this stuff is it's odorless for the most part. I'm just going to go ahead and water this real good. I'm not going to water this all the way because what I'll do, once I've got the rest of these enough to fill a full tray, we're going to bottom water it the rest of the way. I'll put in enough water to fill that tray about halfway up. So let me show you kind of the finished product. Now before I show you the 2 trays that I've got done already, Just a quick tip on this, you can kind of do order of operation. So for example, I divided up the seedlings within the tray, cutting it up like a sheet cake so that there's like a little 3x3 square. So you can do that all at once. Then you can get your containers and you can fill them with the potting mix, halfway up. You can do that all at once and get them all ready to go. Then you can dig out your seedlings and plop them down into the pots. Do that all in one operation, and then come back and backfill all the pots. Get them all nice and secure. Then come through, water them all. Then come through, put them in your tray, and get them bottom watered. That'd probably be the most efficient way of doing this, and that's kind of what I did with the last two. So let me show you kind of the end result of the efforts here. All right, so for the end result here is got 18 seedlings. This happens to be my Brussels sprouts. Got them all potted up. I bottom watered them, and they're doing a pretty good job of soaking that water up. It was halfway up, and now there's about a 1/4 inch left. And then I've got my broccoli. Now the broccoli, it's kind of interesting. They just kind of seemed like the transplanting was a little more difficult on them. They're leaning over a little bit. Hopefully they'll perk up. But same deal, and you can see they've soaked up all the water on there. So I probably need to fill this tray again. Just because these don't feel like they've got a ton of water in them. Alright, so once we get all this done, the next step then will be to get them acclimated to the outdoors, ideally on a cloudy day, getting them outside, letting them be outside, get used to kind of indirect sunlight that's being filtered through the clouds, getting them used to the outdoors a little bit, and then move them out to the greenhouse. Once they're out to the greenhouse, my dad, my sister will be helping me more than likely take care of them, making sure that the trays are bottom water, making sure we're applying some fertilizer, things of that nature to keep them going. And in about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, we should be able to plant them out in the garden. They're being cold hardy. We shouldn't have any like killing frost, like really bad frost by then. It might get down to the upper 30s still. But for the most part, we should be free and clear for the cold weather stuff. At the same time, I'll be starting all my warm weather stuff, so I need the space. So I'm hoping to get these separated, if not tonight, this week. Maybe do a tray an evening. That's the other thing. You don't have to do all this all at once and spend like hours. You can do a little bit at a time over a course of a couple days, get it all ready to go, and then get it out of there. So anyway, that's what we're doing this year. We'll see how things go. So I guess that's it for now. Until next time. Happy gardening.